Hi guys, this is Pierre Gasly and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into the second dimension. We're going to talk about a material that is only two-dimensional. And you're going, that we can use in Formula One. I've got you completely stumped. Okay, if you're an engineering geek like me, I've been hearing about this material called graphene for years and years and years. And graphene is essentially the same material that's in, it's carbon, but it's basically the same material that's in a pencil lead. And graphene was discovered, get this makes the story even weirder. It was discovered by some scientists or engineers that they used Scotch tape and they put Scotch tape on this carbon and they pulled it off. And there was a layer that was literally one dimension. It's one atom thick. But graphene, if you studied it, it's crazy strong. It's crazy conductive. It's like maybe the best conductor of electricity ever. It's stronger than steel, as everybody likes to say, carbon fiber, whatever else. But it's this crazy material that when it was discovered like 20 years ago, everybody said, this is going to change the world. And everything's, it was like nuclear fusion. It was like, it's going to change the world. It's going to solve all our energy problems. Well, this was going to help solve energy problems. So I was watching this engineering video, and they talked about how graphene is now being used in supercapacitors or ultra capacitors. And we all know what capacitors are, all right? They're kind of like a battery. And the difference between a capacitor and a battery is that capacitors store electricity, not chemically, like a battery.
Right.
If you think about a battery, it has to convert from chemical to electrical energy. Well, a capacitor stores it in electricity, is actually static electricity. Yep. So, and capacitors are made up of lots and lots of thin membranes of metal sheets, and typically they're aluminum. Well, if you think about a thin piece of aluminum versus a thin piece of graphene, which is one atom thin, you can get literally thousands times more sheets inside of a supercapacitor or ultracapacitor. And so what that does is provide it takes the capacitor to another level. And so if you think about what a capacitor does, it is instantaneous disbursement of electricity, right? Like if you think about a Formula One car or a Tesla, like let's say a Tesla Plaid or a P100, they talk about how you have to put in a certain mode and it blasts, and you have to have the biggest battery to get the fastest.
Right.
But a capacitor can store a massive amount of energy, but it doesn't have the depth of energy, let's call it, of a big 100 kilowatt Tesla battery.
Mm-hmm.
So so this would be perfect for racing. So when you go into a corner right now in a Formula One car using the curve system, you stomp the brakes, and you absorb as much energy as you can into the battery. But think of it this way: a battery has a small spigot. You can only put so much energy at a time.
Right.
But if you were to use a supercapacitor that had graphene, you could literally stomp the brakes, and instead of using right now, I don't know what the percentages is. I would guess that it's still, 80% using the standard brake technology that we've had for years, and a little bit, maybe 20% storing from the curve system. What if you were able to store the other way around? 80%, let's say you could store 80% of that energy from stomping on the brakes at 220 miles an hour in a, 1,300 pound car. That amount of energy, think about how much energy that is. If you could store all of, there you go. Think if you could store that in a matter of what? A second or two in a braking moment in Formula One. And then right now, the same thing coming out, that electricity coming out, right? So right now you have to have a big giant battery. Well, Formula One cars don't have a big giant battery. So there's only so much of that. We love seeing the new cars come out of a corner, right? They have so much torque because of the hybrid system, right? Well, imagine that if you'd have double, triple, quadruple amount of that amount of energy plus lightweight, because capacitors are very lightweight. Now they're not going to provide down the straightaway power. That's where your battery comes in. But if you were to have some hybrid, Mike Bowles just commented on YouTube. He said, my head hurts.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Mike,
I get it.
I'm going to post some YouTube videos. This one that I watched, it's actually really, really good. It's only like a 10-minute video. But he talked, in this video, he talked about how buses in China use this right now. So they have the little rails up top where they go, because you think about what a bus does. A bus doesn't run around town all the time at top speed.
Right.
They go stop to stop to stop. So think about the physics equation of a bus going 20 miles an hour, but it weighs, 20,000 pounds. It's probably maybe even more energy than a Formula One car, all the different speed differentials. But the point of all that is that you could harness all of that energy that you use in braking in a Formula One car instantly, in a second or two. If you were to calculate it into joules or whatever level, whatever energy measurement you want to use. But I just think that would be a really cool, and I bet you dollars to donuts that we will hear about supercapacitors / ultra capacitors in Formula One before you know it. And
I don't think so, Tim.
And I literally sat up in bed thinking that, wow, this is really cool. So,
well, thank you, Dr. Emmett Brown. Appreciate it.
That's a pretty good analogy. I like that.